Welcome to the Weather Insights Tropical Briefing. I'm meteorologist Scott Pitney along with meteorologist Jeff Lindner. This is Monday, September 9th, the morning edition. And Jeff, we still have potential tropical cyclone number 6. We also are tracking two other areas out in the southern Atlantic basin. That disturbance number 1 now with a 70% chance of development moving to the northwest. 70% over the next 7 days, and then its neighbor right to the right, disturbance 2, with a 60% chance of development over the next 7 days. Of course, all eyes and focus are on potential tropical cyclone number 6. Still a lot of convection, but still not a closed low yet, so we can't call it even a depression yet, but National Hurricane Center is certainly expecting it to become Francine and then eventually a hurricane. But a lot of convection out there, mainly favoring the west side. But as it begins to track north, west, and then eventually north and northeast, that convection is going to start moving over more toward the right and middle part of the Gulf of Mexico. And you can see the track there, the cone now just barely scraping southeast Texas, and National Hurricane Center expecting Francine to become a tropical storm on Tuesday, reaching hurricane strength on Wednesday morning early around 1 a.m., and then continuing the center mean track now continuing toward Louisiana. There it is, Wednesday at 1 o'clock, and then making landfall sometime between Wednesday at 1 o'clock and early Thursday morning as it moves inland right now, looking to be Louisiana. But we can't let our guard down here in Texas because you see the tropical storm wind field there to the right of the X, that yellow area right there is well to the west of that X. So as it moves along the Texas coast, those tropical storm force winds can be felt along the coast. And we do have a tropical storm watch in effect from just north of Brownsville there down to near Tampico in central Mexico because of that tropical storm, because of those tropical storm winds in that wind field. I guess the main thing I'm seeing, Jeff, is a shift in the right, but we're still waiting for this thing to get a name.
Yeah, we're waiting for that center to tighten up. It's just a slow process down here, and a lot of times that's the case when you have these elongated areas of low pressure, where exactly that center is going to form, and there's still some uncertainty in where exactly that center forms. If it forms further to the left or the west, you could come up on the left side of this forecast track. So this would obviously bring more impacts to southeast Texas. If it forms a little bit further to the right, you'd be on the outer right side of this forecast track. This would, potentially bring significant impacts over into southeast Louisiana, Metro New Orleans, Baton Rouge, those areas. So we'll just have to see. And as you mentioned, this is a fairly large wind field down here. Now, some of this is a result of some things going along here along the eastern Mexican coast. But as this comes up, watches and warnings are going to be extended along the Texas coast and issued for the Louisiana coast, likely later today as we come within that 48-hour range. This is the model ensembles and all the great stuff we can look at to see. And you can see here the Hurricane Center, the black dots, a little bit to the left or west of kind of the consensus here, which is just west of Vermilion Bay. So I think we'll probably still see, at least in this portion of the track, a little bit of shifting possibly over to the east or to the right. And I want people to understand that just because the track is shifting to the right and the core of this is now fairly likely to go across our offshore waters and then towards the Louisiana coast, that doesn't mean we're not going to see impacts along the upper Texas coast. We are still going to get impacts Wednesday along the upper Texas coast. We'll talk about that in a minute. The intensity guidance, this is actually old here. Let me see if I can update it. The intensity guidance coming in, this isn't updated, but coming in really in the category 1 range. And we'll see, we got to get this inner core to form. And once that happens, conditions are relatively favorable for strengthening in the northwestern Gulf of Mexico.
Yep.
But we'll just see. We'll just see how long it takes that to happen and how much time it really has. And then this is the arrival of the tropical storm force winds, the 40-mile-per-hour winds. And so, as I mentioned, even though we're on the very edge of the cone, the impacts extend outside of that cone. And so we still have Even on the upper Texas coast here, Matagorda Bay up to Sabine Pass, anywhere from a 30 to 50% chance of 40-mile-per-hour winds along the coast. Up here in the metro area, those are much lower, 10 to 20% chance.
Yeah.
And so we could definitely see some tropical storm force winds, Galveston Island, Bolivar, High Island, down to Freeport. And this is really Wednesday. So starting Tuesday night, maybe down along Matagorda Bay, and then expanding during the day Wednesday across the upper Texas coast, and then obviously into the southwest and south central Louisiana coast.
Yep.
Don't want to leave out Brownsville down here. You're kind of going to get scraped, even a closer approach to Brownsville possibly than up here. Brownsville, South Padre Island, that's why that tropical storm watch is in effect. By tomorrow morning, Tuesday morning, potentially, looking at 50 to 60% chances of tropical storm force winds down here on the lower Texas coast. So, don't completely sleep on it down here on the lower Texas coast. And then the other thing is the hurricane force winds. And I put this in here just to show that there's relatively low probabilities. We're talking 5 to 10% of sustained hurricane force winds here along the upper Texas coast. So this is roughly from about Freeport over towards Sabine Pass. We're going to see higher probabilities over here in southwest and south central Louisiana as we go forward in time. But the majority of and most likely all of the hurricane force winds will be off the coast of the upper Texas coast and out over the waters of the northwest Gulf of Mexico.
And even they're just showing a 20-30% chance. We just don't have a closed low yet. So a lot of that's still up in the air.
Yeah, and those probabilities generally go up as you get closer to the time of the event occurring. But I do want to talk a little bit about the storm surge. We're taking a path into a very vulnerable storm surge area here in the Louisiana coast, and so this is, the Lake Charles area here. We have Lafayette here. This would be the Highway 90 corridor down towards Morgan City and New Iberia. Vermilion Bay and the Atchafalaya Bay over in here. And this is extremely storm surge prone, and any track coming up from the southwest here to the west side of Vermilion Bay, that's an onshore push, south winds coming into that bay, that kind of concave shape of the bay here. And we're anticipating now some very significant inundation. We're talking everything in orange is greater than 6 feet. And we're starting to get kind of up here in the head of the bay, up to potentially 9 feet of inundation. We're talking life-threatening storm surge potential here in the northern portion of Vermilion Bay. Again, this is, south. There's hurricane protection levees along here, and this would be outside of those protection levees. We have Franklin and Jarrett and some of these cities here along Highway 90, and there are protection levees here. We'll see if we start getting to the levels that we would be worried about those. But outside of those levees, down towards the bay, Avery over here in this part of Louisiana, and some of the other coastal communities down here, a lot of this is marsh. A lot of this is where folks don't live. But the potential here for significant storm surge inundation is going up. And we'll see if we really get some of these values here in southwest Louisiana. If the track is further east, this would probably be a north wind, and we can knock those down a little bit. And then even over here on the upper Texas coast, we have a northeast wind now that creates water level rise on our coast. And so everything you see here is the blue is greater than a foot, and the yellow is greater than 3 feet. Again, this is above normally dry ground near the coast. And so this isn't levels of Beryl. Beryl was 4 to 6 feet along the upper Texas coast, so we're lower than that. But still, we could see some coastal flooding, especially right around here, Treasure Island, very vulnerable down here on the Brazoria County coast, especially if we get some big waves coming in. We could see some inundation of the coastal areas, of the roadways and everything down near the coast. And the same thing over here on Bolivar. Inundation could happen, especially if we get that wave action that comes up toward the coast. And we'll be keeping a close eye on this on Wednesday. Again, like I said, even though we're going to get kind of brushed, we're still going to have impacts, especially down along the coast here. So we don't want to sleep on this completely. We don't want to, it's shifted over to Louisiana, let's completely tune it out.
Right.
We will still have some impacts down here on Wednesday.
Yeah. Again, the you got to tune in daily because as we saw with Beryl, the track can change and often does. But right now, this is the consensus of the models. And like the tides and everything else, wind fields and so forth, also the rain, the bulk of the rain has shifted over to Louisiana as expected. But again, Southeast Texas, with banding and tropical banding, these are just models. So, you can't sit on these are the amounts that you're going to get. You can get a band of storms right over you, and these totals can go up very quickly. But yeah, we're looking at a half a foot as expected for southern Louisiana, those kind of rainfall amounts. Of course, with tropical systems, you can get anywhere from 10 to 12 inches is possible. But this is a fairly quick moving storm, relatively, Jeff, to some that we've seen. So maybe we'll be lucky with the rainfall and not get as much as some of it. But there is a very sharp gradient, as we've been talking about. Most of the heavier rain staying offshore. If you look at Southeast Texas, that those rain totals drop off very quickly once you get up around to the College Station area and westward.
Yeah, we actually the forecasters actually pulled back on,
Yeah,
yesterday we were talking 5 to 6 inches down here, and that
yeah,
it really looks like it's going to be off. The greatest threat is offshore. Yeah, we could get some banding down here, especially as that old front kind of lifts back northward.
yeah.
That came through this weekend. But even the totals out in the Gulf have come down, and that's a function of as this kind of comes up and turns to the northeast, it's going to be accelerating or increasing in that forward speed. And so we're not anticipating, I think the rainfall threat here with this is probably on the lower end. Yes, we could get some flooding, especially over here in Louisiana, but I think the potential for storm surge and even bringing those strong winds with an accelerating forward motion, you're going to bring some strong winds well inland here in south central Louisiana. So, Lafayette, you're not right on the coast, you're further inland. That's probably one of the bigger cities potentially that can be impacted here. Hurricane force winds potentially even a parish or two inland from the coast, very similar to what we saw with Beryl. Category 1 hurricane accelerating to the northeast is going to push those winds further inland. So the main message this morning, again, uh, cautiously optimistic. I think for the upper Texas coast, track shifting a little bit to the east. It doesn't mean we're not going to have impacts. And the impacts we will have generally on during the day on Wednesday here, from Wednesday morning through Wednesday evening along the upper Texas coast. And for the most part, I think they're going to be manageable impacts for us here locally, not so much potentially for our neighbors to the east.
Right. And we're closing in about 48 hours or so now from Wednesday morning. So the time to prepare is now. And also, as I said earlier, check in on a daily basis. We're going to be doing updates, briefings a couple times a day for the next couple of days. So we'll have another one this evening, and you can keep it right here. Make sure you subscribe and also turn on those notifications to get the latest tropical updates from Weather Insights. Jeff, thank you very much.